Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first session in our in-house lecture series. And it's the first time we're meeting for the year, so Happy New Year, although it's the end of the month, and wishing you all the best for the new year and for this semester. So today we have Miss Naailah Ali presenting for us. And Naailah is no stranger to this in-house presentation. She's done so many before, and we're lucky to get some chocolate samples, which unfortunately we can't get today. But Naailah is a food technologist at the Cocoa Research Center, CRC, at the UWI since 2006. Her activities span research, training, and quality certification at CRC. Her research covers the cocoa value chain from small-scale fermentation approaches, microbial succession during fermentation, fermentation dynamics, and quality of various genetic groups of cacao, as well as cocoa bean drying and product development. Naailah is a member of the technical committee for the Cocoa of Excellence program, and she's currently a PhD candidate here in the Department of Chemical Engineering in Food Science and Technology, and she is currently awaiting a date for her oral exam. Today, Naailah will be presenting on building technology toolkits to support niche marketing of cocoa by smallholder farms. Naailah, so I pass it on to you.
Okay, thank you, Taras. Can everyone hear me? Yeah?
Yes, we can.
Okay, all right, great. Yeah, this is kind of strange just talking into like a screen. Okay, so I'll just get started. So I'll be presenting on selected snapshots of work done on building technology toolkits to support niche marketing of cocoa by smallholder farms. So the emerging scenario is twofold. On one end, we have impediments to increased cocoa production. Sorry, wrong slide. Okay. Such as climate change and a push for conservation, being drivers for smallholder farmers to seek alternative approaches to economic stability. And what that means is that we're facing changes now in the industry where there is a push for farmers to produce more, but there are also many challenges to that because you have climate change being one challenge, you have an increase in the world wanting to conserve forests and so they're not just going to allow people to go planting cocoa trees all over. So we decided, based on all these prevailing circumstances, to start looking at different ways that smallholder farmers can improve their quality so that they can earn more. And we had a good reason to do things like this because you have increased consumer awareness. So consumers are now more interested in where their chocolate is coming from, where their food is coming from. They have changing tastes and demands. And of course, there's the whole movement where dark chocolate consumption is linked to cardio and mental health benefits. So more people are interested in dark chocolate. And there's also the emergence of niche and ultra niche boutique marketing for chocolates and premium and super premium selections and all these interesting recipes and so. So knowing all the prevailing circumstances, having just given you a brief background, I'll just take you into the objectives. So we tried to craft an approach that cocoa producing countries could use to better understand, why is this happening? Sorry, the potential which exists. I don't know if I have a timer on or something. Is there a reason why the slides would be changing without me?
Maybe if you rehearse and it saved the time, Naailah, that could happen. I'm not sure if that's why.
Okay. Yeah. Let's hope that's not. I didn't really actually rehearse this, so don't.
Oh, dear.
All right,
Okay.
so I'll just be toggling. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
In order to craft the approach, we looked at it in different tiers. So first I had a national level. So we tried to understand flavor at different levels on the island in terms of the entire island itself, a regional level. And when I say regional, I mean cocoa growing communities. So not like the Caribbean region, but regions within Trinidad, as well as cocoa estates and farms. So on that level, as well as a varietal level. Unfortunately, we've not been able to incorporate Tobago into this study yet. So by me talking about Trinidad, don't think that I'm just excluding Trinidad. I understand that it's Trinidad and Tobago, but we've not gone to that island yet to do this type of profiling work. And the last objective after we look at quality in different tiers was to basically validate a toolkit that we want to present for like gathering science-based evidence for niche and ultra niche marketing. And if these words are unfamiliar to you, just think about things like wine, where that's super niche because you have certain regions that produce certain types of wine, and by law, they're the only regions who can call the wine whatever they call it, and they're the only regions who can produce wines with those types of flavor notes and so on, market it as that. So it's almost the same story we're trying to tell for cocoa, the same pattern that we're trying to follow, the same model that has been done for wine and coffee. It's just that cocoa still has a lot of work to do. So we're trying to gather evidence to show that it can fit into that model. All right, so on to the methodology. Essentially, if I've done a couple seminars before for the department in the in-house series, as well as the student seminars for the program, the degree program. So you would have, some people would have seen elements of this already. For the PhD work, we had optimized and validated a styrocooler fermentation protocol. I guess you all can see my cursor, right? So I think once I'm moving it around, it's staying on the slide. So once we had that validated, we then used it for this smaller study that we were doing that kind of links to the PhD work, but it's almost like an offshoot of it to build on it. So after we validated this, so you could see a little picture here in the corner with some of the coolers, and we have a protocol that we optimize. We fermented essentially cocoa from different farms across the island. And one of the key things about this project, this smaller project, that was that we allowed the cocoa beans to sit out on the farm for a while before bringing them to campus to ferment them. So the logic behind that was that it would have the inoculum inherent to that farm. So here's some of the beans spread out on a tarp on one of the farms. And so it's just exposed to the air and to the field and to the insects that are around. So they land on it and then we contain it and bring it back to campus. So after that on-farm inoculation, it's brought here, it's fermented for a set amount of time, 6 days, and we monitor it during that time for things like temperature, pH, we do cut tests. So this is what the cut test looks like. It's just monitoring the physical changes in the bean as fermentation progresses. So the next part of this was drying. So for that, we collected beans at various time points during the fermentation process, and drying essentially terminates fermentation. So it stops fermentation at that point, whether it be 2 days or 3 days, and it allows you to have a snapshot of flavor at that point in time. So we had these little modular dryers set up. We have a similar dryer set up on the roof of the building. And we're actually now testing one of these little dryers out on a farm. So that's what I've been doing for the last couple of weeks. So I had to tell my boss I need to stay on campus today to give this presentation. But that's kind of what we're doing, taking it out to the farms to make sure that it's actually farmer friendly. And so it's just a simple setup. And then we're turning a couple times for the day. We're checking moisture after to make sure it's within the range we want. And I showed you a cut test on the previous slide for beans during fermentation. This is what dried beans would look like, fermented and dried beans. So it's quite pretty, but the different colors and the extent of the ridging gives a story about how well the fermentation was done, and gives us an idea of even what the polyphenol content might be based on how purple it is, and that translates into flavor as well. So it's all connected. It's kind of like detective work. It's all evidence that you're gathering. The next step was to do liquor making. So after we dry the beans, we roast them, we break them, remove the shell, and we grind it into a coarse paste, which we can store so that it ages for a couple weeks. And then we would move on to tasting the sample. So this is what the nibs look like. This is essentially the dried bean, so the cotyledon, deshelled and roasted. So it's a roasted bean and it's quite tasty. You could put it on your yogurt or in your porridge and stuff. And then this is grounded further in what we call a melanger to a paste. And this is a prerequisite for chocolate. So you would then add your sugar and cocoa butter. And so if you wanted to create a chocolate, but we actually taste it at the liquor stage. So a bit about the sensory assessment, and it's all transparent. It's not stuff we make up. This was done in a randomized block design where we looked at about 38 flavor attributes, and this protocol is in the public domain. So you can actually just Google Cocoa of Excellence and you can find the template we use, the glossary of terms, the taste wheel, and you can actually start tasting your own cocoa liquors and profiling them if you wish to. So it's all there online so that you can check it out. So that's the methodology. Into some results now. So going back to those objectives, we wanted to look at flavor diversity on a country level. And the reason being to explore something like what would be a national branding, what is the national branding potential, right? So from the information we collected, I just quickly I will give you some snapshots of some information so that you can kind of understand on the different tiers what we found and what this means for the next steps for the work. So fermentation across the 36 farms and in 22 growing communities were sampled. And we looked at maximum and minimum attributes intensities across key, dominant, complementary, and core flavor attributes. And the results were quite interesting. So in terms of your dominant complementary notes, we found that we got notes like fresh fruit, and this spanned a range of things like tropical fruit, berries, citrus, dried brown fruit, which was like in the cooked and raisin area, which is what we typically see for Trinidad samples most of the time. In terms of mild to moderate notes, we found some floral, some dark wood, mild spice, fresh nutty notes. In terms of core attributes, there was moderate fruit acidity and balanced bitterness and astringency and a robust base cocoa flavor, which is very good. So what this all means is that if you were to describe a sample from Trinidad, you would find notes that span these attributes. So this is looking at it on a national level. If we had to create a brochure for Trinidad talking about the cocoa in Trinidad, right? Well, and when we do get the Tobago information as well, it will be added. So if we were to look at this now on the regional level, technically 40 cocoa communities were covered in this study. However, this is just a 30-minute presentation, so I can't go into the 40 communities. So I just picked out 2 to show you, which I think are kind of opposite because they're on different sides of the island. So we have Cedros and Guaycotamina. And in the next 2 slides, I'll present a bit about the history of each community, along with the average flavor profiles for the cocoa found there. From the farm's sample and a description of the main flavor trends. And why am I doing this? It's to get us into the mode of associating flavor profiles with the story of a community, and in essence, begins to form the basis of building a community brand. So it's kind of like when you think about Jamaica, you think about Blue Mountain coffee. It's that specific region, that altitude that gives you that type of coffee. We want to add that kind of, I guess, glamour to cocoa in Trinidad, where you think about Cedros or Guaycotamina and immediately you tie the story of those communities to the flavor profiles that you would find. And this offers a plethora of opportunities for farmers to really market their products from these regions, right? If we could actually prove that the flavors are very distinct. So the first region, citrus, the average flavor profile. So here I just want to explain this. We present the flavor profiles as circular polar plots with different colors for each attribute, and the height indicating the intensity of the flavor. And there's a standard error bar at the top. So that's to show in terms of the panel, so that you know that if you have small standard error values, your panel is aligned. Now, our panelists are trained. So typically, we don't have large standard errors when we do sensory assessments. So we keep our standard errors nice and tight, and the panel usually gets the consensus quite quickly on what the profile should be. And just a bit, Cedrus is historically a fishing village. It's a coconut grove. There are cocoa estates there, and the beans there exhibit mild, delicate flavor profile. So there was some mixed floral notes, fresh and brown fruit notes, light woody and nutty notes. So when you think about light woody and nutty, and you think about it's also coconut growing area, and you start to develop a nice story and you add the history to it, and it really shows the potential that Cedrus could have to market itself as this specific flavor in this region. So the next region is Guaycotamina, and it's located, the farms that we sample are located close to a tributary, the Orapooch River. It's a low-lying area. The flavor notes were characterized by moderate fresh and brown fruit notes, moderate acidity. There was also, the last sample, I explained that there were woody and some nutty notes. This sample had herbal and tobacco spice notes. So you can see already when the two communities compared. So you might think that, okay, this seems similar in terms of fruity and floral and acid, but we also have that distinction between the nutty and woody happening in Cedrus and the more spice and tobacco happening in Guaycotamina. So in order to understand the farm level, we took a deep dive into specific farms in Guaycotamina. So remember the tiers that I explained at the beginning. We look on the national level, then the regional level, then we're now going into the actual estate or farm in that region, right? So again, it's a short presentation, so I can't go into every farm that we sampled in Guaycotamina, so I'll just be looking at two, La Carlota and Matse Estate. And the profiles may look similar at first glance, but we see evidence of nuanced presentation, of intensity, of balance, of acidity and fresh fruit and brown fruit and floral and spice between the two farms, with common astringency and bitterness and a common level of cocoa flavor. So I'm going to go into the polar plots now, and you could check those out. So we see here, and I'll just use my cursor, there's some differences in nutty, some differences in floral for sure. And even though so keep in mind also that these are this is total floral, but initially, remember I told you that floral can be broken up into herbal floral, flowers floral. So there's a whole range within floral. So that's what we mean by there are nuanced differences, because you can see floral here, and it doesn't even mean that they have the same type of floral. They could have different types of floral. So that's the next dimension of this whole thing, and it's what we're trying to show as being, a lot of potential for these regions. So on now to varietal level. So this is the last tier. This is actually now not looking at a farm, but looking at the actual genetic types on the farm. So on a farm, you're gonna have different types of trees. The different types of trees may belong to different genetic groups. But before I could go out on a farm and look at that, I had to look at it where we had more controlled conditions. So for the PhD work done with the Department of Chemical Engineering, where the 30 kg styrofoam fermentations were optimized across 3 crops, I also looked at the differences between Trinitario hybrids and Refractario hybrids, which are 2 genetic types. Trinitarios tend to be found on a lot of farms in Trinidad. Refractario is less of a common genetic type to find here. But of course, they're both present growing at the International Cocoa Gene Bank. And so I was able to get pods from there to do these fermentations, which were done at Cocoa Research Center. So despite having common growing and processing locations for flavor across 3 crop years, there were some differences that we could see. For example, by sort of day 8, the Trinitario beans were associated with a lot of over-fermentation and putrid notes, which gives us the idea that the optimum fermentation time for Trinitario to elicit the best flavor may actually be for less than or equal to 6 days. Whereas the Refractario was able to have better flavor notes later in its fermentation, which means that it could probably do with a little more fermentation than the Trinitario. So again, that shows you that these 2 genetic types could actually be fermented separately. In an on-farm setting, farmers don't separate their genetic types. They lump everything together and ferment it as one. But they may actually be missing out on benefiting from better flavor profiles and being able to market that and leverage that to their advantage. So we want to show them that you can actually separate out your fields into what the different trees are and try and ferment them in smaller batches so that you can actually have more interesting flavor notes. So that's what the point of this whole varietal tear was about, right? So it also shows that optimally processed Trinitario beans are more likely to be associated with fresh fruit and floral, whereas optimally processed Refractario beans are associated with cocoa woody, sweet and caramel notes. So as I lead into the conclusion now, we have scientific evidence to support niche and ultra niche marketing of cocoa microlots as national brands, regional brands, and community brands, and even on the estate level as well as the varietal level. And I've just shown some examples of logos here that are already in the works. So we already have a national branding happening on our cocoa beans, which I don't know if everybody's aware of, but we do have a national brand. We do have some cocoa growing communities and cooperatives already sort of going out there and saying that what they have is different from what the rest of Trinidad has. And they have been getting their various certifications. We have some estate level branding already. San Juan Estate, that's one of the estates that we're working with right now with the modular dryers. And we also know Trinitario. Everybody talks about Trinitario as being native to Trinidad. So we also have some level of varietal branding there already. And now we can actually provide a dossier of robust technical information to support branding at these levels, which we can pair with history as well as other profiles for the regions. And these approaches can be used as a model for the entire cocoa producing, everybody across the world. So in conclusion, well-prepared Trinidad and Tobago origin cocoa beans present very balanced and versatile flavor profile that can stand alone or be used in blends. The post-harvest and processing protocols used in the studies were able to facilitate optimum flavor expression in the samples. And each one of those protocols is a story by itself. So that's like a presentation by itself, right? Some of the protocols that we would have gone into, which I'll be happy to talk about more if anyone has questions. And of course, the suite of parameters monitored, and I just recapped what they were, but there were also some other samples we collected. As you would imagine, there has to be a chemistry component to this to go along with the sensory stuff, but we don't have that data available yet. but the plan is to have those analyzed, whether with GCMS or LCMS, to really get an idea of what's happening on the chemistry side. And finally, ongoing work, future work. So we want to get into, and we've already been doing this, the metagenomics, which is understanding the DNA of the microorganisms involved, the metabolomics, which is the study of the metabolites within an organism, cell, or what have you, and taking a deeper dive into varietals by exploring accession-specific fermentations. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Naailah, for that excellent presentation. It's very interesting. So I now open up the floor for any questions or discussion, etc.
Probably just leave the share screen on in case people want to go back to specific slides or something.
Yes, definitely. We're going to leave that on.
Hi, Naailah. Of course, always very interesting. As I remember your days of presenting from the very beginning of the in-house seminar series with Dr. Bacchus Taylor. It's good to hear from you again. Always interesting. I remember some years ago you did some work on adding flavors by fermenting with passion fruit and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Any way that you have linked that to the different varieties that, like, say for instance, it has a more nutty or woody, nutty anyway, profile. If you layer that with something external that is floral or fruity, have you linked those two?
Yeah, so that is a pretty controversial topic, right? When I had used the passion fruit, I had used it mainly to function as a natural indicator. So because we were dealing with something that we had to consume, and I wanted to understand movement of acids and other flavors, flavor-inducing compounds and flavor-contributing compounds across the tester during fermentation, I wanted to use a very aromatic pulp that we could taste in the beans to know that, okay, the external pulp or what's happening externally really impacts what happens inside of the cotyledon and then into the flavor, like in a very significant way, right? But after I did that study, it just formed the early work of understanding, okay, it's because I wanted to ferment very small amounts and I wanted to insert them into a big mass of cocoa. But then if you're fermenting specific varieties and you put it into a big mass of cocoa that's a bunch of different things, how do I know that the flavors from all the pulp in that mass are not impacting that specific genetic type? So that's why I use the passion fruit to really understand how it translates into what happens in the cotyledon and what we can taste. And it was a positive, I guess, outcome, because at the end, the cocoa liquors had a lot of passion fruit type notes in them. How this translates into chocolate, I'm not sure, because chocolate has a whole conching process, which a lot of volatiles are lost during that process. And I'm not sure how it would hold up. I didn't try it in terms of converting it to a chocolate. Why I said that it's controversial is because there's certain rules about what, I guess, on the market. There are two types of beans that we consider beans that we market, right? There are two categories that they fall into. One is called bulk. So it's beans that tend to be just predominantly cocoa or chocolatey flavored. And that's like a lot of the material coming out of West Africa. It's a lot of what you make your Cadbury bars with and your Mars bars. And then there's the finer flavor type beans. Those are the special ones. There are only about 8 countries in the world that are exclusively or 100% final flavor, of which Trinidad and Tobago is one of those countries. And we have to go to a big meeting every couple of years with a dossier and defend that we're producing final flavor beans based on the flavors that we're producing and the types of genetic material we have and all of that. So it's a very, I guess, thought out process about how this designation happens. But where we're kind of blurring the lines is if we add fruit to fermentations. That means anyone with bulk cocoa can now, I guess for lack of a better word, replicate or simulate or imitate finer flavor cocoa, and that makes you think about a lot of things in terms of the categories that you're marketing beans as, and how do you now police whether people are just going crazy and adding fruit, right, to fermentations. For now, the rules are that you have to declare it. So there are actually a couple products already on the market. The chocolate company from France, Valrhona, they have a chocolate that's made with cocoa that's fermented with orange juice, and they have to declare that on the package. So they can't just say that it's, it tastes like orange and it's naturally orange blossom or something. They have to market it as what it is. So going back to your question, yes, there's potential for adding fruit, and that could sort of bolster genetic groups that are less aromatic and give them that edge. Or it could even provide an avenue for farmers to add fruit that's on their farm to their fermentations and create a whole new product. But it might create some difficulty with how they market it. And we've not thought through what happens during the chocolate making part of it and if it evolves into something unpleasant. So those things would have to be researched properly before we go into that realm.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Naailah. Any more questions for Naailah or comments, feedback?
Hi, Therese. Sahida here. Just have one quick comment for Naailah. Hi, Naailah. Excellent presentation. Hi, Naailah. Excellent presentation, and of course, you always impress us with your vast depth and breadth of knowledge on the subject area. The only thing missing, I would say, was that we couldn't see you. So that's my comment.
On my camera and wave to you all when I'm done.
Yes, that would be nice. So at least those, I think everybody here might already know you, but for those who don't, at least they can put a face to the name and the information source. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Sahida. Any more feedback, comments?
Maybe I'll stop sharing.
Well, actually, Naailah, don't stop sharing.
Okay.
I actually had a question. I'm just leaving mine till everybody
Has the hand raised? So Ricardo, Clark with a raise.
Oh, he got a hand up?
I think so.
Ricardo?
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, Dr. Clark.
Hi, Naailah. Thanks for your presentation. Excellent work that you've done, and I noticed you've made some significant findings there. One where it may be beneficial to the farmers to ferment the different types of cocoa on the farm. Has any of the farmers take this on and started practicing?
I think just one farm, and you've worked with them as well, probably Stallmeyer. They're very aware of the fact that they have a TSH field, TSH 919, and they keep it kind of separate. I don't know if they're fermenting it separately, but they've given us beans to do work on that has been exclusively TSH 919. So I know that they're aware of which plots are what. As for the other farmers, the Monsterart Coop, they've started dabbling with fermenting different farmers separately. So typically they put all the beans together. But and it's been a good couple of years now that they've done that. They know that specific farms within the co-op have older trees. And sometimes if they want to like profile those older trees, so we've done a couple of the farms already, well, separately. So we're aware that some of the farms have older material and newer material. So I think, yeah, some of the farmers are taking it seriously. They're building their boxes now. If they do have the resources to construct, they're doing the variable capacity boxes. So they can divide the boxes into halves or quarters, so they could kind of keep the different material separate. If they're venturing out into marketing, I don't know. A lot of the people dabbling with separating their beans are probably doing their own little chocolate making outfits on their own. So they would kind of be ahead of the pack. I mean, we even had a chocolate maker who was like fermenting stuff with bear, and she had it marketed. I don't know if you all know Gina. Gina had like a chocolate that was fermented with bear. I think she purchased from a farm from Cedrus. It would probably be, I'm not sure, but she had a chocolate that was made, that was maybe year before last year.
Naailah, excellent work.
Oh. I can't see who's in here because I still have the share screen on.
I can take off the share screen.
Okay, I can't really like target people and be like, hey, you have a question?
You could more than do that.
No, I don't want to.
I know. I just had a question. I think when you were talking about the little setup you have for the farmers, and you're saying that you turn them over, I think 3 times a day when drying.
Yeah, so I see Priscilla is here. So she's the student doing a PhD on involving drying with
maybe I could ask her.
Yeah. So, no, we do recommend a minimum of 3 times. I mean, if you want to turn it more than that. So the issue with drying is that you don't want the beans to be out there and they're not being aerated properly and they continue fermenting. So depending on how thick the mass is and if you're not letting airflow pass through and all of that, you could have some over fermentation, and you could also have some, with the over fermentation, you have a lot of off flavors. So you want to be careful during your drying process that it's not a harsh drying process. You don't just throw all the beans out in the hot sun and leave them for an entire day, but it's gradual. You put them out for 2 hours, then 4, then 6, and you kind of make sure you're turning them at intervals so that they're not sitting there too long, especially in the first couple days. If you're not turning properly, you could get some external mold. So you need to kind of move them around so you don't have that external mold. I don't know if Priscilla want to add anything to that, but I don't want to put on the spot. But yeah,
I don't want to put on the spot either. I wouldn't like it. But I was just, when I asked the question, I was wondering like if you all came up with like an optimum of 3, or after trials, or if
I think so. There's a bean manual which is available online, free in different languages, by Calbisco, and I don't know if they talk about turning in there, but we just know that for the conditions, like on the roof here outside, it's probably you want to do a minimum of 3 turns. I mean, when we just put the beans out, we turn it way more than that. We probably would turn like up to 6 times for the day. So every team member would take a turn and go up there and kind of move the beans around because you don't want to leave them sitting too long. But as the drying process continues, we would need to turn less and less frequently because the beans are less sticky and less chance for external mold. So it's not, by the time you reach about the 3rd day of drying, you don't need to go up there as often.
Okay. And you all have looked at like automating the turning, or is it something you're looking into, or you all will think it's best to do it?
There was somebody from mechanical engineering who came some time ago and said they could even like try and connect something so that we don't have to run up there to close anything because we have a dryer with a movable roof. But we also now have these little dryers that are covered, so we don't need to run up and close any roof. In terms of automated turning, no. We're thinking about things like fans and things to push air through the dryer, but we've not looked at anything to actually turn the beans mechanically.
Okay, interesting. All right. Thanks, Naailah.
Welcome.
Anyone has any questions for Naailah again, or comments, feedback? Have 5 minutes left.
I don't have any chocolates to give out this time. It's kind of hard virtually.
I know, it's sad. We enjoyed that last time. That's all right. All right. Well, if no more questions for Naailah, feedback, Naailah, thank you so much for
You're welcome.
your interesting presentation. I always look forward to your presentations.
Thank
And
you.
you did not disappoint.
If you all need to find me, just contact Dr. Majaffa and she'll put you in touch.
Okay, good. We're taking note of that, right, Frida?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Good. And for the chocolate samples too, right, Frida?
She
I'll
might
see what I can arrange. Yes.
charge a transport fee. She might charge.
Yes. Yes.
Oh dear.
Yes. We're working on the details. We are working on the details right now.
Okay, good. All right. Naailah,
Oh,
thanks so
yeah.
much.
I'll wave so people could, yeah.
Yes,
I'm
come
in my
wave.
office. so I should-
Hi. So nice to see you.
Yeah, I'm still alive.
Well, thanks so
Okay,
much,
Thanks
Naailah.
everybody for having me.
Before we end, I just wanna remind you all that our next presentation will be week after next week. So that is the 10th of February, and we'll be looking at a presentation on carbon capture in Point Lisa's industrial estates by Jared Rampasad and Arul Mangra. So we look forward to that. I look forward to seeing all of you all here in 2 weeks. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care. Stay safe. Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care, everybody.
Bye everyone.